I'm now delighted to be joined by Rachel Luttrell as we look back on the next part of our Stargate franchise documentary. We're delighted to be joined by Rachel, who played the character Teyla Emmagan in the difficult surname to pronounce, Rachel. Teyla is the most important aspect of that character's name in the iconic Stargate universe in Stargate Atlantis. And Teyla, how did it come about for you, Rachel?
Oh my goodness. It came about, in the natural way as an actor. I auditioned like 1,000 years ago, and I booked the part. Actually, I thought I booked the part. Everything was great, and Brad Wright was there, and Rob Cooper, and everybody was there, and they all shook my hand, and I thought it was in the bag, and then I didn't hear anything for almost a month, and then finally, I got the phone call that I booked the show. So I went up to Vancouver, and, that was it. That's how it all started. And the funny thing for me is that I didn't really know how big the franchise was at the time.
Okay.
I was not aware of Stargate, except for the movie that had preceded all the shows years and years before. And I remember seeing that as a kid and loving that movie. But I'm very happy that I actually didn't know much about, how huge Stargate was, because I think I probably would have been a little bit more intimidated. But yeah, go for it.
I suppose, Rachel, I suppose you would have heard of Richard Dean Anderson, so
Of course.
it didn't sort of ring a bell that Richard Dean Anderson was part of the Stargate universe before you went to that casting role?
No, I was so focused on, this new show and this new character who resonated with me quite a bit. And I was pretty naive about the whole thing. I really was. Yeah.
And I suppose, Rachel, in terms of Stargate Atlantis, as we know, Stargate SG-1, 7 seasons, a cult sort of a following. You're a new cast. You were all a new cast. I know David Hewitt spent a tiny bit of time in Stargate, the original series. So he was a bit of a familiar face, a bit of continuity. But for the rest of you were starting off in new sort of characters. And I suppose Stargate Universe had a big global fan base. And obviously there was no Amanda Tapping in this, no Michael Shanks, no Christopher Judge, no Richard Dean Anderson, the main priority cast that would have been so much to the Stargate fan base throughout the 7 seasons. So that first season, I imagine it was very pivotal for you to find your own feet and to make your own mark, and obviously appeal to that big, massive franchise audience that Stargate had.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. But, that plays right into what I was just saying, that, I certainly wasn't aware of it. So the pressure of having to play into this massive franchise wasn't resting that heavily on my shoulders. And I think for the rest of the castmates, for SGA, we were just living the experience of our characters, and happily we all gelled so well with each other. The chemistry was magnificent between the cast and the crew, that it was just kind of this magical, creative experience. And thank goodness the fans actually really liked it. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, everybody got along so well. So that chemistry that you see on screen is quite legitimate. It's, it's true. It's real. Yeah.
And I suppose, Rachel, the character Teyla, just looking at you now, your sort of really dark sort of black hair. So for the character Teyla, did the producers come to you and say we wanted Teyla to be a brunette, or at that time were you naturally a brunette, or?
Oh, well, no, I mean, there was a lot of conversation about my hair, because my hair tends to be very curly, and we were shooting up in Vancouver. And so they decided to put a wig on me. So
it was a wig.
Yeah, it was a wig. It was and it was more like a blonde, light brown blonde wig. Yeah, and the wig itself was a $10,000 wig.
Wow.
Yes, that was made especially for me. I had to get like a head mold, and then they wove all the hair in, and it was just like, this fabulous. It was a gorgeous wig, and when I put it on, I felt, transported. I wasn't myself anymore. I was definitely Teyla. But yeah. So.
And I just in relation to that playing Teyla, one of the most memorable episodes I remember in Stargate Atlantis, doing my research about it there today, was actually the most fun part for you, I suppose. You actually got to play the arch nemesis, a queen of the race, believe it or not. And in terms of that, that's another sort of different costume, and I imagine that took an hours in terms of makeup, and I suppose that must be exciting as well to be your enemy is your friend is your enemy, as the saying goes.
Yes. There's a lot in there to parse out. Let me just say this: I found out that I was going to be playing the Queen just after I had my son.
Okay.
And he was always on set with me as an infant, and I was terrified that I was going to terrify my son.
Okay.
And I actually begged them to change their mind. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I thought it was going to be awful, but they loved the idea. And yes, I had to show up hours before everybody else. The makeup, our makeup artists were absolutely amazing. And yes, the makeup process was quite intense, and the eyes and the hair. But I'm happy to say that, first of all, my son saw me and laughed.
Okay.
He thought it was hilarious, and he's not scarred, so there's that. And then, yes, I loved portraying the Queen. Completely different energy, just a completely different kind of power. She was so fun to portray. So I'm glad that in the end they didn't listen to me and they actually pursued that storyline, because she was very, very fun to portray. And it was, it's fun to play kind of villainous characters, but within her she was villainous, but she wasn't villainous. She was like, there was so much going on. It was fun.
I suppose in terms as well, Rachel, I suppose they left no stone unturned to make Stargate Atlantis a success. From all the props they gave you to the spaceships to get beamed up while you're running in fields and sort of stuff like that. The technology and the sci-fi effects. And are you this was probably a big major project for you at the time, probably one of your first major sort of project. Were you taken back by it after the first season you were sort of familiar with it, but in the first season, after maybe 4 or 5, 6 episodes, were you taken back by the enormous scale of it, and in terms of what they were to be able to deliver in terms of sci-fi and that whole experience? It obviously gave that sort of outer body experience most of the times.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it blew my mind, certainly when I stepped on the set for the very first time. It was amazing what they were able to create, and it just it felt so real, and it was absolutely gorgeous. The craftsmanship on everything, all the ships, the control room, the base, the rooms, all of it, the gate itself was amazing. And just the scale of it was fantastic, and it certainly helped all of us to actually imbue the character in the stories, because it was amazing. It was magical what they were able to do.
And I suppose Stargate Atlantis was a big success, but from time to time we saw original members of the Stargate SG-1 come and make sort of cameo roles for an episode as well, and that almost as well even heightened the popularity. I know Michael Shanks came over for 1 or 2 episodes, Amanda Tapping was there for 1 or 2 episodes, and Richard Dean Anderson came along for 1 or 2 episodes as well. So obviously you got to work beside them as well and forge bonds and relationships with them as well, and almost it sort of really gave life to the whole Stargate sort of entity, that seeing those people on board and sort of mesh the whole thing into a real sort of precise sort of a project, that you weren't in opposition against each other really.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, we never felt like we were in opposition. Never, never. They were always so welcoming, so fun. It's so funny. You know, we would cross our paths constantly as we walked to the studio, and, you know, they would always throw out little digs, you know, for us newbies. But it was fun. It was always lighthearted, and it was, you know, we always had a really great camaraderie. But yes, when the cast members were actually able to combine in stories, absolutely, it solidified the franchise, and it was a lot of fun. And that cast was wonderful. They were all really, really great as people as well as performers.
I suppose that Rachel, I suppose we saw the two main enemies for you at the time were the Wraith and Replicators. And just on we mentioned about the Wraith, the Replicators, obviously that's a different type of enemy, and the mechanics in that, and you seeing all these sort of high-tech gadgets and gizmos come to you, and sort of, even though to try and portray that sense of fear on set when you're just looking at really what is technically a robot in many senses of the word, but really sort of blown back by that sort of technology and how well that came across, because obviously a human sort of enemy, it can be portrayed an awful lot better, but when you're dealing with a robot or a gadget that really looks like the size of a tarantula, sometimes it can come across as maybe, well, is that really a formidable enemy?
Sorry. Yes, I love that question. So, you know, in sci-fi, oftentimes we are acting to things that are not there.
Yeah.
We have to use our imagination, and we have to rely on the fact that our visual effects artists are, you know, going to create something amazing. Half the time, we don't really know what the heck it's going to be. There's some description of it, and so, you know, our reactions are based off of that. We're reacting to a green screen, or as you said, just a prop sitting there and it's not moving. But then afterwards, I mean, it's absolutely amazing what the visual effects were able to come up with. And yes, that always blew my mind. It was always very fun to see, you know, we were staring at a green screen, and then all of a sudden it's this massive landscape of warships and things coming at us. It's amazing.
And I suppose in terms of your character and Jason Momoa's character, ye came from that sort of Pegasus galaxy. So the sort of first episode, you were almost that well-kept secret as such in terms of Stargate Atlantis. And obviously it combined that sort of new sort of universe as well. So obviously seeing the first sort of episode and knowing that you were coming in the background when the sort of launch, there was almost, well, wait for it moment in terms of anticipation. And the opening episode, did it sort of feel the same for you, obviously, because you're obviously in the second episode?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, there was a lot of anticipation as to how, you know, the audience was going to respond to it. We all met and we all watched Galaxy Quest a couple of days before our, you know, series premiere. And but yeah, I mean, it was exciting, and it was so wonderful to see that it was well received. Yeah.
And I suppose it's roughly been, I say, 15 years now. 15, it seems a long time ago.
Yeah.
Since Stargate Atlantis. And I suppose if the opportunity came around and they sort of did a new Stargate movie and an opportunity came out for you to play a cameo role and reacquaint yourself with that Teyla sort of character, would that be something you'd be still up for, or are you still, or is that chapter of your life closed?
No, of course I would be up for it. I had a blast with Stargate. It would be fun. Are you kidding me? And I love Teyla. It would be very fun to be able to, yeah, to imbue her again and to you know, portray other stories. Absolutely. And
I suppose Rachel, one of the characters that sort of stood out in Stargate Atlantis was the character Rodney McCoy, played by David Hewitt. And I suppose in terms of that, it's terms of a guy with so much intelligence, but prone to the odd slip up or sort of humor in terms of his relationships with sort of others. But David, in terms of his character portrayal, he's always struck me as a really talented actor, a professional that could play comedy to seriousness, sci-fi to horror as such. And I suppose in terms of working with David Hewitt on set, was he really the sort of daddy sort of figure to you all?
No.
No.
No, he was not a daddy sort of figure at all. God, no. David, I have a very soft spot in my heart for David. I love David. David, as you said, is a consummate professional and a very talented actor. And he had to tackle so much technical dialogue, which he delivered beautifully. And as you said, with humor as well as with intensity, etc. But no, I mean, David was not the father figure, except for the fact that, if Jason got out of line or Joe or people were just acting up a little bit, he would kind of be that guy who would just be like, God damn it, we're about to roll, focus. But he would have a laugh with the rest of us, just, and he could definitely, throw down and be silly with the rest of us. It's totally.
Yeah, and I suppose we saw as well, there was one or two death scenes in term to the cast as well. We saw Dr. McKay pass away, and we saw the leader of Stargate Atlantis, Tori
Higginson.
Tori passed away towards the end. And I suppose in terms of that, that sort of brought a sense of realism as well, in terms of it sort of brought an older sort of audience as well, saying, well, this is a good sort of sci-fi show, but it's not really too camp either. And I suppose that's important as well, as to portray a sci-fi show, to get a really serious sort of fan base, not to come across as probably a bit camp or something. And you certainly didn't do that.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, our writers just did a wonderful job of being able to toe the line between fantasy and fun as well as realism. And as I said, the chemistry between the cast was very, very real. And so we were able to, just really bring out those stories. And we all really felt for each other. So yes, when a cast mate, when a character from the show was lost, it was all very, very real. But yes, absolutely. I feel like Stargate, and I think that this is why it's so well loved, is because it has that lightheartedness, but it also has these really wonderful, rich storylines. And they just weave both of those through, the seasons so beautifully.
Yeah, and I suppose, Rachel, lastly, the last sort of question I'll pose to you now, in terms of Teyla, it probably is a fond sort of memory in your heart playing that sort of character. And if someone had to put that character in a dictionary and left two blank sentences underneath, what would Rachel Luttrell like those character? What she like those two sentences to read? Rachel Luttrell, memories of Teyla, and what would she like Teyla to be remembered as?
Oh gosh, I would love Teyla to be remembered as a powerful female character who didn't fit into a box. Who had everything, who wasn't just like this sexy thing who held a gun, but was also well-rounded and intelligent and strong and thoughtful and insightful. She was a well-rounded, beautiful character.
On that note, Rachel Luttrell, pleasure talking to you this evening, reliving your memories of Teyla in Stargate Atlantis in the next of our featured Stargate franchise documentary. Pleasure sharing all your memories 15 years on, and we look forward to seeing you in that cameo role in 2021. No doubt it's the producers are on the phone as we speak, getting everything prepared and dotting the I's and crossing the T's in terms of that big money contract.
Such a pleasure to talk to you. Truly, truly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.